It's been 6 hours since the power went out. Outside, the temperature sits at 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside your beautiful, modern, open concept home, it's already dropped to 45 and falling fast. You're standing in your kitchen that flows seamlessly into your living room, that opens gorgeously into your dining area. And you're starting to understand something terrible. That $80,000 renovation you did 3 years ago, the one where you knocked down all those unnecessary walls to create that magazine perfect great room with the soaring vaulted ceiling and the floor to ceiling windows that bring the outside in. You just turned your home into a convection oven running in reverse. You're trying to heat 3,000 cubic feet of air with a decorative fireplace that barely works. And you're losing. Your great grandparents lived in a house with 8 small rooms, doors everywhere, ceilings so low a tall person had to duck, and windows you could barely call windows. It looked cramped. It looked dated. It looked like poverty. And it kept a family of 7 alive through winters that would kill you in your architectural masterpiece in less than a week. Because here's what nobody tells you when they're selling you that open floor plan, those vaulted ceilings, that indoor outdoor living experience. Modern homes are designed for infinite, cheap energy. They're not designed for survival. They're designed for the assumption that the grid never fails, that natural gas flows forever, that technology is a constant. And when those assumptions break, these homes don't just become uncomfortable, they become uninhabitable meat lockers in hours. What you're about to learn is why your modern home is a thermal sieve, what the ugly old farmhouses understood about physics that we've forgotten, and how to retrofit something called zone defense into your home before winter comes. Because the difference between freezing to death in your own living room and making it to spring isn't about how much firewood you have. It's about understanding that survival is about heating people, not heating architecture. Let's start with what's killing you right now. The open floor plan. It's the signature feature of modern home design, the thing every buyer wants, the thing that adds $50,000 to your home's value. It's also a thermodynamic nightmare. Your kitchen, living room, and dining area aren't 3 separate spaces anymore. They're one giant interconnected volume, typically 1,500 to 2,500 square feet of continuous floor space. With a standard 10-foot ceiling, that's 20,000 cubic feet of air you need to heat. But most open concept homes don't stop there. They add a vaulted section, a 2-story great room where the ceiling soars to 18 or 20 feet.
Add another 8,000 cubic feet. You're now trying to maintain temperature in 28,000 cubic feet of space. And here's the problem. Heat rises.
In an open plan with high ceilings, all your precious warmth pools at the top of that vaulted space completely inaccessible to you down at floor level where you're actually living. You're sitting in the cold bottom layer while your heat disappears into architectural dead space that exists purely for aesthetics. And then there are the windows. Modern design is obsessed with natural light, which means glass, lots of glass, floor to ceiling windows, sliding glass doors, window walls. It looks stunning. It photographs beautifully. And glass is your enemy. A single pane window has an R value of 1. Double pane gets you to R2 or R3. If you spent serious money on triple pane low E windows, you might hit R5. Compare that to a properly insulated modern wall at R13 to R20, or even an old 1920s wall with horsehair plaster at R11. Your giant glass wall is bleeding 10 to 15 times more heat than an insulated wall. Formula is simple. Heat loss through a surface equals the area times the temperature difference divided by the R value. When 30 to 40% of your wall area is glass, you're hemorrhaging heat through those beautiful windows faster than any reasonable heat source can replace it. But the real betrayal is the insulation theater. Your builder told you this house has R30 in the attic, R19 in the walls. Sounds impressive. Except those R values assume a perfectly sealed envelope with no air leakage and no thermal bridges. Modern homes have recessed lighting, which means dozens of holes punched straight through your insulation. They have HVAC ductwork running through attics, creating massive thermal bridges. They have complex roof lines with valleys and dormers and intersections that are impossible to seal properly. The result is air leakage rates of 5 to 15 air changes per hour. And here's the cruel joke. Without mechanical ventilation, which requires electricity, You actually need some air exchange, or you'll suffocate or die from carbon monoxide poisoning. So, even if you could seal the house perfectly, you'd be forced to crack windows, and there goes your insulation advantage entirely. Cathedral ceilings deserve their own condemnation. That vaulted ceiling in your great room, the one that makes the space feel so open and grand, in a standard room with an 8-foot ceiling, heat stratification is manageable. The warm air rises, but it's only rising a few feet. In a cathedral ceiling room with an 18-foot peak, the hot air rises and stays trapped at the very top, completely inaccessible. If you manage to heat the floor level to 68 degrees, the air at the peak might be 85 or 90 degrees. You just wasted 20 degrees of temperature gain in unusable space. You're burning fuel to heat air that will never touch a human body. And then there's your heating system. Your home has a central furnace or heat pump connected to ductwork that distributes conditioned air throughout the house. It requires electricity for the blower motor, it requires electricity for the ignition system, it requires electricity for the thermostat controls. When the grid goes down, even if you have a gas furnace with a full propane tank, it won't run. The $6,000 furnace you bought 3 years ago is now a 200-pound paperweight. You might have a backup generator, but generators need gasoline, and gasoline doesn't last. After a few months, it oxidizes, absorbs moisture, and turns into varnish that clogs your engine. Your backup plan has a chemical expiration date. So here you are, standing in your modern home, watching your breath start to fog in the air, and you're beginning to understand that everything about this structure was optimized for comfort under perfect conditions, not survival under any conditions. Now, let's talk about the houses that actually worked. The 1920s farmhouse, with its 8 small rooms and doors everywhere, wasn't designed that way because people were stupid or because they liked feeling cramped. It was designed that way because they understood something about physics that we've forgotten. You can't heat space you're not occupying, and you can't afford to try. Each room in that house was a separate thermal zone. The kitchen was 150 to 200 square feet with an 8-foot ceiling. That's 1,200 to 1,600 cubic feet of air. The living room was similar. Each bedroom was tiny by modern standards. And every single room had a door, a real door, not an open archway, not a suggestion of separation, but a solid wooden door that could close and trap heat. When winter came, the family didn't try to heat the whole house. They retreated. They chose one room, usually the kitchen or a small parlor, and that became the winter room. That room had the primary heat source, typically a wood stove or coal range. The family cooked there, ate there, worked there, and often slept there during the coldest months. The bedrooms were used only for sleeping, and they were warmed not by heating the whole room, but by carrying hot bricks wrapped in cloth to the bed, by piling on heavy quilts, and by the residual body heat of multiple people under those quilts. The formal parlor, the extra bedrooms, the second floor, they were shut off completely. Doors closed, heavy curtains hung over the doorways for extra insulation. Those zones were allowed to drop to near outside temperature. No energy was wasted trying to defend them. It sounds harsh. It sounds like defeat. It's actually brilliant resource allocation. The walls in those old houses were thick, not because of modern insulation, they didn't have fiberglass bats, but because of mass. The exterior might be wood clapboard or brick. Inside was lath and horsehair plaster, 1 to 2 inches thick. Total wall thickness was 6 to 8 inches with air gaps. That plaster had thermal mass. It absorbed heat from the stove during the day and radiated it slowly overnight. It smoothed out temperature swings, creating a more stable microclimate. Compare that to modern drywall, which is half an inch of gypsum with almost no mass. It heats fast and cools fast. There's no thermal buffering. Temperature swings are wild and immediate. Ceilings were 8 feet high, not because people were shorter, but because low ceilings keep heat where you live. Heat stratification still happens, but the hot layer is only 1 or 2 feet above your head. It's still accessible. It's not lost in a vaulted void. And the reduced air volume per room means less energy needed to heat it and faster warm-up time with a small stove. The windows were small and strategic. 6 to 12 panes per window, not because large panes were impossible, but because small panes lose less heat. And those windows had exterior wooden shutters plus heavy interior curtains made of wool or velvet. At night, you closed the shutters, which added R2 to R4 of insulation. Then you drew the thick curtains, adding another R2 to R3. Suddenly, your window's effective R value was R5 to R8, comparable to a modern double pane window with insulated shades. During the day, south facing windows were opened to capture passive solar gain. North facing and wind facing windows stayed shuttered to minimize loss. It was active management, not passive assumption. And then there was the central chimney. In well designed old homes, the chimney wasn't on an exterior wall. It ran through the center of the house, a massive brick or stone structure weighing 3 to 5 tons. It served multiple fireplaces or stoves on different floors. That thermal mass absorbed heat from the flue gases as smoke rose through it. Then it radiated that heat into the adjacent rooms for hours, even after the fire died. It was a thermal battery for the entire house. Modern chimneys are on exterior walls lined with metal, and every bit of heat goes straight outside. There's no thermal mass benefit at all. The people who lived in those houses understood something we've forgotten. Winter isn't something you defeat, it's something you negotiate with. You give up the spaces you can't afford to defend. You concentrate your resources on the smallest defensible zone. You use thermal mass, compartmentalization, and strategic insulation to create a survivable microclimate. And you accept that this is what survival looks like. So, how do you take your modern thermal sieve and turn it into something survivable? First, you identify your winter core. This is the single room you're going to defend. It needs to be the smallest room that can fit your household. It should be as close as possible to your best heat source. It should have the fewest and smallest windows. It should be on the first floor because heat rises and you don't want to fight physics. Ideally, it's an interior room with fewer exterior walls, because every exterior wall is a surface losing heat. In a typical modern home, your candidates are a den, a home office, a large bathroom, or a master bedroom. If you have a fireplace or can install a vent-free heater, the room with that heat source wins. If your home is pure open concept with no separate rooms at all, you're going to have to create a room within the room using barriers, which we'll get to. Once you've identified your winter core, you need to seal it off from the rest of the house. You're going to build temporary walls using heavy blankets, quilts, sleeping bags, canvas tarps, or insulated thermal curtains if you've prepped in advance. Hang them floor to ceiling using tension rods, hooks screwed into ceiling beams, or paracord lines strung across the space. Overlap the edges, use binder clips or safety pins to seal gaps. You're not building a permanent structure, you're creating a thermal barrier. Use a multi-layer approach. Outer layer of heavy fabric for thermal mass and air sealing, middle layer of reflective emergency blankets to block radiant heat loss, inner layer of another heavy blanket. This gives you an effective R value of R3 to R5. It's not amazing, but it transforms an uncontrollable open space into a manageable zone. Now address the floor and ceiling boundaries. Cold air sinks, and your floor is a thermal drain. Layer rugs, preferably wool or thick synthetic. Add foam exercise mats or sleeping pads underneath for extra insulation. Cardboard works as underlayment if that's all you have. If you're stuck with high ceilings, hang a false ceiling of emergency blankets at 7 or 8 feet high. This creates a dead air space above that acts as insulation and traps heat in the lower zone where you actually live. Your windows are next. Apply bubble wrap or cling film directly to the glass. It static clings or you can tape the edges. This creates a dead air space and adds R1 to R2. Then hang a heavy blanket or sleeping bag over the entire window frame, taping or nailing the edges to the wall to seal air gaps. If you can get outside, board up the window or add plywood shutters to block wind. The exception is one south-facing window. If you get sun exposure, make that window openable during the day. Even winter sun through a window can add 200 to 500 BTUs per hour per square foot. That's meaningful heat. Capture it during the day, then seal everything at dusk. Every interior door to an unused room gets closed and sealed, weather stripping or rolled towels at the door bottoms. This is your primary defense. Compartmentalization. For exterior doors, hang a heavy curtain or blanket, 6 to 12 inches in front of the door. This creates an airlock buffer zone. When you have to go outside, you pass through the curtain first, which minimizes cold air intrusion into your core space. Now, you need a heat source, and your options are limited. The best option is a vented wood stove or propane heater that exhausts to the exterior. This eliminates carbon monoxide risk. You'll need a chimney or vent pipe. The next best is a catalytic propane heater, like a Mr. Heater, that's rated for indoor use, but even these require some ventilation. Crack a window 1 inch. In an emergency, you can use many candles. 10 to 15 tea lights in a small sealed room can raise the temperature 5 to 10 degrees. It's not much, but it's safe. The last resort is body heat and insulation only, huddled together under heavy blankets and sleeping bags. And no matter what heat source you use, you need a battery powered carbon monoxide detector. This is non negotiable. Even safe heaters produce trace CO, and in a sealed space, it can accumulate. Here's the key mindset shift. Do not try to heat the room to 68 degrees. You can't sustain that fuel consumption. Instead, heat the room to 50 to 55 degrees and insulate the people. Use a layered sleep system. Put foam pads or multiple blankets on the floor to block cold from below. Use a sleeping bag rated to 0 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Add wool blankets over the sleeping bag. Wear insulated clothing, base layers, wool socks, a hat. Right before bed, heat, water, or stones on your stove. Wrap them in towels. Place them in your sleeping bag 15 minutes before you get in. This gives you 2 to 4 hours of luxurious warmth while you fall asleep. Your room can be 45 degrees, and you'll sleep comfortably in your insulated cocoon. Now let's talk about why this actually works in hard numbers. Heat loss is calculated with a simple formula. BTUs per hour equals surface area times temperature difference divided by R value. Let's run 2 scenarios. First, the modern open plan home with no zoning. You have 2,000 square feet of floor space with 10-foot ceilings. That's 20,000 cubic feet. Your total surface area to heat, including walls, ceiling, floor, and windows, is about 30 to 500 square feet. Average R value, dragged down by all that glass, is about R80. Outside temperature is 15 degrees, inside target is 65 degrees, temperature difference is 50 degrees. Plug it in, 30 to 500 times 50 divided by 8 equals roughly 20 to 1,000 BTUs per hour of heat loss. If you're burning hardwood at 7,000 BTUs per pound, you need over 3 pounds per hour. That's 75 pounds per day. Over a month, you'll burn through 1 to 2 full cords of firewood. Good luck scavenging that in a collapsed world. Now the zone defense scenario. You've sealed off a 12 by 14 foot room with an 8-foot ceiling. That's 1,344 cubic feet. Surface area is about 670 square feet. With your improvised ceiling and insulation, you've improved the effective R value to R6. Same outside temp, same target temp, same 50-degree difference. 670 times 50 divided by 6 equals 50 times 600 BTUs per hour. That's less than 1 pound of wood per hour, 20 pounds per day. 1 cord of wood lasts 3 months or more. This isn't theoretical, it's physics. Zone defense uses 75% less fuel, and more importantly, it's actually achievable with scavenged wood and limited resources. So, which rooms do you abandon, and in what order? Think of your home in a triage hierarchy. Priority 1 is your winter core. This is the only space you actively heat. Priority 2 is buffer zones, the rooms directly adjacent to your core. You leave the doors to these rooms closed but not sealed. They're not heated, but they'll hover 5 to 15 degrees above outside temperature because of heat leakage from your core. This is useful. They act like an airlock, insulating your core from the outside. Priority 3 is cold storage zones, second floor, basement, garage, formal rooms. These are completely sealed off. They'll reach near outside temperatures, use them as a refrigerator or freezer for food storage in winter. Priority 4 is abandoned spaces, attics, crawl spaces. Let them equalize with outside temperature, don't fight it. The biggest structural risk is frozen pipes. If pipes in your walls or abandoned zones freeze, they'll burst, and when the thaw comes, you'll have catastrophic water damage. The safest approach is to turn off your main water supply and drain all pipes. Open every faucet and the drain valve at the lowest point of your system. If you absolutely need running water, keep your core room and 1 adjacent bathroom in the priority 2 buffer zone. Leave cabinet doors under sinks open so warm air can reach the pipes. Let faucets drip slightly overnight. Moving water doesn't freeze as fast. Now for the knowledge your great grandparents carried and we've lost. Bed warming. Before you sleep, heat a large stone or brick on your stove for 1 to 2 hours. Wrap it in multiple towels to prevent burns. Place it at the foot of your bed. This radiates heat for hours. The philosophy here is critical. You're not heating the room, you're heating the bed.
The room can be 45 degrees.
Your bed cocoon is 70 degrees. You sleep comfortably and safely while using minimal fuel. Daytime heat scavenging. Open your south-facing curtains and shutters during sunny hours, even in winter. The sun adds meaningful heat. Close everything at dusk to trap those gains. Every meal you cook is also heating your space. Bake bread, simmer soups. It's dual-purpose activity. If you have a non-gas oven, leave the door cracked open after baking to release residual heat into the room. Body heat management works in layers. Insulate your core with a vest or down jacket. Insulate extremities with wool, socks, gloves, and a hat. You lose enormous heat from your head. In a small, sealed room, multiple bodies make a difference. A family sleeping in the same room can raise the air temperature 5 to 10 degrees just from body heat. It's free energy. And here's what nobody wants to admit. Letting parts of your house freeze will damage it. Moisture in walls freezes and expands, cracking plaster and drywall. Frost heave in basements and crawl spaces can shift your foundation over repeated freeze-thaw cycles. When spring comes and those frozen walls thaw, moisture saturates the materials. Warm spring weather turns it into a mold paradise. You're going to have structural repairs to do. Accept it. Your goal is keeping people alive. Houses can be repaired, frozen corpses cannot. Modern homes have specific features that become dangerous in a grid-down freeze. Tankless water heaters require electricity to ignite and run. Even with propane, they're useless without power. Electric fireplaces are decorative only. They provide zero heat without electricity and give you a false sense of security. Radiant floor heating requires electric pumps and a boiler. It's beautiful in normal times and completely dead when the grid fails. Smart thermostats and automated vent systems can't be manually overwritten in some setups. If the battery dies, you lose all control of what little system functionality you might have left. Then there's the psychological siege. Retreating to one room feels like defeat. You're abandoning most of your house, the house you paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for, the house you thought represented success. Cultural expectation tells you the whole house should be comfortable. But survival is about efficient resource allocation. It's not defeat, it's physics. You're also dealing with cabin fever, a family of 4 in 150 square feet for months. Tension, conflict, boredom. You need coping mechanisms. Assign roles and tasks, firewood duty, cooking, water management, cleaning. Structure prevents despair. Rediscover storytelling and games. No screens. Cards, board games, reading aloud. Take brief walks outside during the warmest part of the day. It prevents total isolation madness. If you have children, they require emotional buffering. They'll sense your fear. You need to project calm and purpose even when you're terrified. And here's what you should do before winter, not during the crisis. Stockpile materials now. At least 10 heavy blankets, wool or synthetic, rolls of reflective insulation or emergency blankets, tension rods or hooks for hanging barriers, weather stripping for doors, window insulation film kits, foam sleeping pads, a battery-powered CO detector with extra batteries, acquire a heat source, a vent-free propane heater with a hose and a 100-pound propane tank, or, if you have the time and money, install a wood stove with proper chimney pipe. Get a fireproof hearth mat. Then do a practice run. Pick a weekend in fall. Seal off your winter core room. Live in it for 48 hours with minimal heat. You'll discover gaps, discomfort, problems. Fix them now, not during the crisis when you're already freezing. Because here's the final truth. Your home is a reflection of assumptions. Modern open concept homes assume infinite grid power, cheap natural gas, and technology that never fails. Those assumptions are luxuries, not laws of nature. When they break, the house reveals what it really is, a volume of air that wants to match the temperature outside. Physics is undefeated. Thermodynamics doesn't care about your aesthetic preferences or your renovation budget. Heat flows from hot to cold. Large volumes require more energy. Your home layout is either working with physics or against it. The 1920s homes weren't backward, they were wise. Those cramped, outdated looking houses with their small rooms and low ceilings and annoying doors kept families alive through the Dust Bowl, the Great Depression, and brutal winters without electricity. Modern homes are optimized for comfort only under perfect conditions. Old homes were optimized for survival under any conditions. Walk through your house today, right now. Identify your winter core room. Buy the materials to seal it. Practice your zone defense before you need it, because your thermostat isn't making you warm. It's making you blind to what your house actually is and what it will become when the power stops. When the grid fails, you'll have 6 hours before you start to understand that architecture is a promise, and that promise was built on the assumption that energy is infinite. It's not. The heat will leave, the cold will enter, and the only question that matters is whether you'll know how to stop it before it stops you.